Еще раз добро пожаловать на этот вебинар. Это то, что мы называем ознакомительный вебинар. Прошу всех, которые присоединяются через Zoom, пожалуйста, отключить свои микрофоны. И также прошу вас, пожалуйста, указать свою фамилию, имя, если вы можете в Zoom. Так что спасибо, что вы с нами. Давайте, пока мы ждем коллеги, и в самом деле многие из вас уже присоединились, я хотела бы коротко вас ввести в курсы дела. Не все, которые сегодня к нам присоединяются, уже знают про проект «Дарья». Так что наша встреча сегодняшняя состоится в рамках проекта «Дарья». Это проект, финансируемый Европейского Союза, который посвящен развитию навыков именно для молодежи. Проект обращает большое внимание на инклюзивность с разных точек зрения и также на трудоустраиваемость. Я здесь хотела бы подчеркнуть, что когда мы говорим о молодежи, мы не делаем разницу между теми, которые учатся в этом моменте в профессиональном образовании, обучением, те, которые, может быть, учатся через образование взрослых, которые занимаются курсами в сфере занятости. Так что этот проект посвящен развитию навыков для всех, но именно для молодежи. Коллеги, еще раз, если вы в Zoom присоединяетесь, пожалуйста, выключите свой микрофон. Проект является региональным проектом, так он посвящен темами, которые интересуют более одной страны. Участвуют все 5 стран Центральной Азии, и мы имеем удовольствие сами работать в ближайшие 5 лет. Проект работает в 3 больших сферах. Сфера развития новых данных, сфера развития более гибких квалификаций. И третья сфера, третий модуль, это модуль, в котором состоится наша сегодняшняя встреча. Это модуль, который посвящен гибким инклюзивным подходам к преподаванию и обучению. Сегодня мы организуем вторую такую встречу, так что это часть того, что мы называем ознакомление, когда мы представляем те инструменты, которые мы будем вам предлагать использовать в ближайшие годы, работая вместе в Дарья. Первая встреча была посвящена рамке реформы цифрового образования. Сегодняшняя встреча рассматривает вопросы рамки цифровых компетенций, поддержки которые поддерживают обучение в течение всей жизни. И будут еще 2 другие встречи. Хотела бы подчеркнуть, что это ознакомление, так что это первое знакомство. Сегодня у нас ограниченное время, лишь 2 часа. Мы не будем идти очень глубоко, но это чтобы все могли делить одно понятие о том, какие инструменты мы будем в ближайшие годы использовать. Я знаю, что пока еще присоединяются коллеги, поэтому я коротко буду сейчас говорить о том, что мы сегодня будем делать. Мы коротко будем объяснит о том, откуда придет Digital, так что это вводная, справочная информация. Потом будет 2 сессии, чтобы обсуждать более глубоко, объяснить, как это работает, как можно это применять и так далее. И в конце нашей сессии, и, наверное, это будет очень-очень интересная часть, будет практический обмен о том, как применяется Digital в неформальной сфере, и также как работает Digital, как он включен в учебные планы, в стандарты, в этом случае в Украине. Я думаю, что почти все, которые хотели присоединиться, это делали. Поэтому сейчас давайте посмотрим, кто сегодня с нами. Я попрошу свою коллегу Анну Колобову делиться с вами ссылкой Mentimeter. Так что вы можете присоединиться через ту ссылку, которую вы видите в чате, если вы находитесь с нами в Zoom. Также вы можете ввести код через свой мобильный телефон. Код – это тот, который указан сверху. Так что наберите, пожалуйста, Mentimeter. Коллеги, выключайте, пожалуйста, свои микрофоны, если вы с нами в Zoom. Так что у нас к вам будет два вопроса. Это, во-первых, из какой страны вы присоединяетесь к нам сегодня. Так что, коллеги, пожалуйста, либо нажимайте на ссылку в Zoom, либо набирайте на своем телефоне и укажите код. Пожалуйста, мы видим и в чате, что у нас есть и коллеги из Туркменистана тоже. Не все, есть коллеги, которые сидят совместно в комнате, так что есть Казахстан, но, пожалуйста, те, которые в Zoom и которые здесь нам отвечают в чате, не в чате надо ответить, но в Mentimeter, так что, пожалуйста, используйте ссылку, с которой мы делились с вами, чтобы нам сказать, откуда вы к нам присоединяетесь. Не так многие коллеги пока это используют. Коллеги, которые присоединяются через YouTube и Facebook, также могут принять участие. Так что наберите, пожалуйста, Mentimeter и тот код, который указан здесь сверху, 86 84 65 78, и скажите нам, откуда вы присоединяетесь. Я вижу, что, наверное, больше ответили у нас в Zoom в чате. Я очень рада, что у нас участники из всех стран сегодня. Так что это как раз одна из наших целей. Поддерживать общее понятие между нами всеми о том, что такое цифровые компетенции, как с ними можно работать. Я рада, что вы присоединяетесь. Окей, мы, наверное, переходим на следующий вопрос, Анна. И следующий вопрос, если, пожалуйста, вы можете ответить через Mentimeter. Пожалуйста, скажите нам, какой уровень образования вас интересует больше всего? В том смысле, какой тип образования, какой уровень образования вы представляете? И здесь можно выбрать несколько ответов, если вы хотите. Так что, коллеги, будет интересно узнать, кто с нами. И есть коллеги из технического профессионального образования, пока не большинство, высшее образование. Анна, можешь ли ты, пожалуйста, еще раз отправить линк в чате, чтобы коллеги могли присоединиться и видели это сразу? И тоже, коллеги, в YouTube, в Facebook, используя ваш телефон, вы можете тоже присоединиться. У нас много участников из высшего образования. Сейчас Анна снова отправила ссылку в Zoom. Есть коллеги из неформального образования, которые не используют Mentimeter. Давайте попробуем еще немножко, какой уровень образования вы представляете. Образование взрослых. У нас много интересующих, поэтому грация. Это будет важно для вас и для вашего обмена опытом. Окей, я вижу, что сейчас многие присоединились. Пока большинство интересует из сферы технического профессионального образования. Есть много коллег из высшего образования. Есть многие из подготовки преподавателей, переподготовки, повышения квалификации, извиняюсь, и, естественно, обучение взрослых. Так что я надеюсь, что сегодня наша сессия будет интересная для всех вас, потому что, естественно, рамки, о которых мы будем говорить, актуальны для обучения в течение всей жизни, так что это для нас, для вас, для наших детей, для наших родителей, внуков, так что вы находитесь в правильном месте. И с этим я предлагаю начинать. Спасибо, Анна. И передам слово моему коллегу Алессандро Брольпито, который здесь работает с нами в Европейском фонде образования. Он старший эксперт. Его сфера как раз цифровое образование, обучение, цифровые навыки. Алессандро, пожалуйста.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm very glad to be here today in this event in Central Asia and talking and making a brief introduction. I think there are some microphones open. A brief introduction of the Digital Competence Framework for Citizens. In my presentation, I will use the term also DCOMP. That is the acronym used for this. But when I talk about DCOMP, it's about the Digital Competence Framework for Citizens. So there is a brief agenda about my short intervention. I would like to explain the why has been developed a European framework for digital competence. What does it mean, according to this framework, to be digitally competent? What is important to know to understand the comp, and how was the comp developed and by whom? And how the comp evolved over the time. It took actually some time to be properly developed, and how it is used in practical terms. So let me say, first of all, that the digital competence in the European Union is one of the 8 key competencies that the European Union has identified as essential for all citizens for personal fulfillment, active citizenship, social inclusion and employability, and last but not least for lifelong learning in our modern societies. So digital competence is one of these key competencies for all the citizens, together with communication in the mother tongue, communication in foreign language, mathematical competencies, learning to learn, social and civic competencies, sense of entrepreneurship, cultural awareness and expression. So these are the 8 key competencies that, and one of these is the digital competence. But what does it mean to be digitally competent? In DCOMP, there is a definition. Of course, in the word there are many different ones, but digital competence is about the involvement and the confident, critical and responsible use and engagement with digital technologies for learning, for your work and for the participation in the society. DCOMP include 21 competencies clustered in 5 areas. And for each digital competence, there are 3 main pillars, I would say. There is a knowledge dimension. So what you are supposed to know about that digital competence, the skills dimension. So what I'm able to do with this knowledge and my attitude. And this is becoming more and more important. It's about our feeling and approach in the use of digital technologies. So these are the 3 pillars that are defined for each competence. Now, the what of digital competence. The digital competences are defined in the framework as a set of descriptors, so there is a definition for each competence. And for each competence, there is a set of 8 proficiency level. And to understand what does it mean to belong to a specific proficiency level, you have examples, concrete examples of what does it mean. And why a European digital competence framework? It could be a why for a regional digital competence in Central Asia. Well, the DCOMP has been developed to have a shared understanding among the member states about what does it mean to be digitally competent. It's important to highlight that it has a neutral language. It means that it's not linked to a specific technology. Technology is very fast evolving, so it aims to be far from a specific technology. Offer shared vision and vocabulary. This is important in a regional discussion, and as well in the European Union, to have a common vision and vocabulary about the digital competence and the digital skills in modern society. And last but not least, it helps to boost a common understanding and the sharing of practices among the member states and among the users at all levels. It's very important to also to highlight in this brief introduction how the COMP has been developed. For sure, it was essential and a holistic approach, bringing together different domains, different actors. I'm thinking to the scientific community, the research community, the policymakers, the practitioners, the internationalization, because the DCOMP, of course, is one of the international, let's say, framework to understand, to conceptualize digital competence in the world. There exist, of course, other. So it was important also to compare the European perspective with the other. What is really important to highlight is the scientific underpinning behind the COMP, and also the consensus building. So the research environment was producing something, but to test the concept, practitioners were heavily involved in this discussion. We had also a research project financed by Erasmus by the European Commission to supporting and look into specific elements of application, of development of the COMP through Erasmus Plus project. So by whom, in a nutshell, I would say there is a policy dimension in the actors involved. There are researchers, there are thematic experts like the European Training Foundation, my organization, and last but not least, several stakeholders. Just to mention employment services, unions, social inclusion actors, and all the other actors that to some extent are involved in the delivery, in the accreditation of digital competencies, and etc. So in this slide, the number 7, indeed, I'm not going through in the details, but just to highlight that was a long process that started 10 years ago. So we could celebrate the 10th anniversary of DCOMP this year, and it's great to make it during this event as well. But it was taking time, but the evolution were preserving the backbone and the structure originally defined in 2013. And now I would like to conclude with some information about the latest version. If you download the DCOMP, it is available in several languages. And the latest version was just modifying the example dimension in DCOMP. Of course, we could mention, we are aware of the turbulent, I would say, evolution of artificial intelligence. So we wanted, the new version wanted to include an example to say, I'm expert, I'm digitally competent, providing example of the use of artificial intelligence. This is something that actually is an example referring to the problem related to the use of social media, related, for example, to the misinformation, disinformation about the environmental sustainability. Often we know that the digital and the green transition move hand to hand. So it's important also to include examples related to the environmental sustainability. So in total, 250 examples have been added. I want to finish giving a very concrete example, or 3 examples of how DCOM has been implemented. Has been implemented in the Europass. Here you have the link, the slide will be shared. So basically there is a standard curriculum in Europe where digital competence has been conceptualized according to DCOM. There are self-assessment tools developed through Erasmus Plus project, for example, that help each individual to see where they are in their digital competence according to DCOM. There is, of course, we need to measure progress at system level. And the DAISY is an index, the Digital Economy and Society Index, include, of course, the human capital dimension and the digital competence of human being. And again, DAISY has been developed on the basis of DCOM. And this is my last slide to give some references to paper that has been developed to provide a concrete example and practices, inspiring practices about the use of DCOM. They are in English, and you might consult this as a concrete example of application. So I would stop here and thanking for your attention. Of course, there are other presentations, they are going deeper, but if you have any questions, of course, I will be very glad to answer to your question. So the floor is back to Christine.
Спасибо большое, Алессандро. Это было такое сжатое введение в то, откуда придет к нам DigiCom, кто был вовлечен. И я думаю, что это один из очень важных элементов, и тоже важно для Дарья, что это действительно работа очень-очень многих стейкхолдеров на региональном уровне, в этом случае Евросоюза, и которые поэтому представляют такой очень гибкий и богатый опыт и разные...
Русский перевод.
Окей. У нас, может быть, что у нас проблемы с переводом? Коллеги, у вас слышно? Ну, я говорю по-русски, так что русский перевод не должен быть слышен, правильно?
Да, слышно.
Все, всем слышно. Замечательно, спасибо.
Прекрасно слышно.
Спасибо, коллеги. В этом моменте я предлагаю продолжать сразу с презентацией Стефано Клузер. Я хотела вам сказать, что, пожалуйста, вы можете задать свои вопросы, пока вы слышите вот эти разные презентации в чате. Будет время, где мы будем выбрать некоторых из этих вопросов, так что в конце каждой презентации будет время на вопросы. Алессандро, в этом моменте я предлагаю продолжать с Стефано, и я думаю, что если вопросы появятся, они для вас обоих появятся. Так что, коллеги, не стесняйтесь писать свои вопросы в чате, и то же самое для коллеги в YouTube и Facebook. Стефано, please.
Thank you very much. And I'm also very glad to be here this morning. And my task is to give you to go a little bit deeper into the understanding of the DCOM framework. I will be taking up some of the points that Alessandro just illustrated to you, but try to explain them with a little bit more time. So, as Alessandro said, digital competence is one of the key life competencies that have been identified by the European Union as essential for lifelong learning. It's one of 8, but let's understand better what do we mean by competence? As Alessandro said already, competence in this perspective is a combination of three elements. An element of knowledge. I understand the problem, I know what I should do, and so on. But there is also a component of skills. I'm able to do what is needed. I'm able to use a given tool, which might be digital or other type. And as he mentioned, there is an element of also of attitude. I need to have the right attitude to complete effectively the task and to be consistent over time. I often give the example of a driver. I may know driving rules, I may be a good driver, but if my attitude is to be a risk taker, a person who enjoys driving fast, well, the attitude might produce a final result which is not optimal. Competencies are, as a friend of mine, the author of the Intercom framework, Margherita Bacigalupo, said once, competences and their elements are like the stars in the sky. You can think of all kind of huge variety of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and infinite numbers of them. But key competencies are like constellations. They don't really exist, but we see them. And often the interesting thing is that we see them differently depending on where we live across the world. So competence frameworks were established to define, to make visible in a specific way a given competence area, in this case, the digital competence. So what is a framework, a competence framework? It is a scheme, a document that helps us understand and see a given competence by providing a number of elements. In the case of the DICOMP competence framework, we are talking about 5 dimensions of the framework. The first one is the main areas of the competence, which is called dimension 1. And as Alessandro said before, we're talking about 5 areas. Then a second dimension is about the specific competencies which make up, which belong to each area. This is dimension 2. And we have 21 of such specific competencies in DICOM. These competencies are articulated over proficiency levels. And again, we have a description of the aspects which differentiate them. We will see them in a while. In the case of DICOM, we will see that we have either 4 or 8 proficiency levels, depending on how we look at them. And finally, we have examples. Alessandro already mentioned this. To better understand what do we mean when we describe a competence, examples are given. Examples can be given like in dimension 4 of the framework in terms of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, as we saw, but also in dimension 5, we have use cases. In particular, DICOM provides use cases in the employment scenario and in a learning scenario. We will see these things later in more details. But before moving on, let's see if we can, I would propose you to try to understand, to identify, according to your opinion, which of the following 5 options best identifies, from your point of view, the essence of digital competence. And I am sorry, but you may choose only one option. So the options are knowing how to use apps on computers and smartphones to communicate and perform other tasks, having programming skills, being able to protect one's digital devices and data from intruders and other risks, knowing how to solve technical problems with digital devices and internet connectivity, and finally, knowing how to access and use online services, public, private, and commercial. So let's see the answers. Okay. More people answering to this question.
Я только хотела добавить здесь, Стефано, one moment, для коллег в YouTube и Facebook это тот же код, который вы использовали раньше, да, который указан. Спасибо. Sorry, Stefano, to interrupt.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have a nice distribution of opinions, and in fact, there is not a specific answer. Can you see my presentation? I don't have. Okay, let me go back to it. Okay, there is, in fact, I just wanted to say this, there is not a correct answer to the question I asked before, because all those elements, these options that you saw, are in fact part of digital competence. And as we will see, the framework, the DCOM framework, covers all these domains of digital competence. As Alessandro mentioned before, this is the official definition at European level of digital competence for all citizens. And I wanted to underline some aspects of this definition. As you can see, the reference to the confident, critical, and responsible use of digital technologies underlines the fact that digital competence is something that goes beyond the efficient use of digital tools. Of course, to be digital competent, you have to know how to use digital tools, but that's not enough. Digital competence in the DCOM perspective is a broader notion. And it's a transversal competence, which is valid in different life contexts. We saw the references to learning, work, participation in society. And it's a transversal competence which is increasingly essential to develop all the other key competencies. It's very hard today to think about, for instance, developing an entrepreneurship capability without mastering, to some extent, digital competence or learning languages or participating to society. So this is a very ample definition of digital competence. Let's now look a little bit closer to the 5 DCOMP dimension that we mentioned before. Dimension 1 is the 5 competence areas. As you can see, information and data literacy is one, communication and collaboration, digital content creation, safety, and problem solving. A way to look at them is to notice that the first 3 areas are also considered to be vertical competencies in the sense that they are they can stand on their own to some extent. And let's go briefly through them. The first area is about browsing, searching information on the internet or on digital environment, evaluating this information in a critical way and managing it, organizing it, saving it, retrieving it, and so on. The second area is about communication and collaboration. And again, here we have different specific competencies. We have to be able to interact through digital technologies. We have many of them today. To be able to share information and content through these technologies, engage in citizenship through these digital technologies. And here we have, for instance, the use of services, online services, public and private. And we have to be able to collaborate through digital technologies, which is not exactly the same as sharing. It's a little bit more complex. And when doing these things, it's important to know the netiquette, the rules of behavior online. It's, you know, on the web, on social media, all kinds of very often terrible things happen. So it's important to be aware that there are rules that have to be followed and behaviors that are that must be followed. And finally, the managing of digital identity, as when we are navigating online, we produce digital footprints that accumulate and ultimately define who we are and what we do and how we appear online. So this is called the digital identity. And the third vertical area is digital content creation. Developing digital content, which might mean files, text files, a presentation, a video, a multimedia product, and so on, which is done today mostly by integrating and re-elaborating digital content, which raises important issues of copyright and licenses, and programming. The ability to do some programming at different levels of complexity was included here, because programming today enhances the possibility of production of digital content. And then we have the two transversal competencies areas. One is safety, which has to do with protecting the device, personal data, and privacy, but also the health and well-being of ourselves and our children and families, and protecting the environment, which is becoming an important issue all around the world. And problem solving is about solving technical problems, but also being able to understand, facing a need, facing an issue, which is the best technological solution to adopt. And creatively using digital technologies for innovation, for instance, and as well being able to identify our digital competence gaps and being able to fill them. So we move now to dimension 3. This is the visual that was created when the 8 proficiency levels were first presented. And it's the swimmer in the digital ocean. And you can see in the little round icons, you can see the steps of this progression that we will look now in more in details. But you see from the person putting their feet in the water and being a bit worried about what to do, and then starting to swim, becoming able to swim on their own, and over time even becoming able to help others, and even design new tools, in this case a surfing table or other toys or products that can be used for navigating and swimming in the digital ocean. More in details, dimension 3, as you can see, highlights the existence of 4 overall levels: foundation, intermediate, advanced, and highly specialized, which can be broken down into 8 granular levels. And these levels are differentiated by basically by 3 dimensions. One is the complexity of tasks. We move from simple tasks to routine tasks, and more complex tasks to very complex problems with many interacting factors. But proficiency also has to do with a degree of autonomy. When we start using technology, very often we do this with guidance, and then we gradually become more independent and also able to adapt to contexts, different contexts, and so on. And finally, in the DCOM framework, there is a 3rd dimension, which is the cognitive domain, identified according to the Bloom taxonomy. And you see here at the lower levels, you have remembering is a major cognitive dimension, but then you move up to understanding, applying, and creating, evaluating and creating. Dimension 4, as Alessandro mentioned before, is about the examples of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. In DCOM 2.2, we made an effort to describe these examples in a more standardized way than it was the case in the first DCOM published in 2013. And so we identify words which characterize each type of example. In the case of knowledge, the standard words are somebody's aware of, knows about, understands that, and so on. In the case of skills, is knows how to do, is able to do, can search, and so on. And for the attitude dimension, which is the most, if you want to say, complicated to actually deal with, we have verbs like open to, curious about, weighs the benefits and risks, is concerned of, and so on. As Alessandro anticipated, I won't go into the details of this. In DCOM 2.2, we produced over 250 examples, about 10-15 examples for each of the 21 competencies, with a different mix of knowledge, skills, and attitude, depending on the competence. And these examples where the occasion, the opportunity gave us the occasion to introduce formally in the DICOM framework, new and emerging themes, which are important today in the digital world and digital practices. And Alessandro already mentioned them, so I won't go through them again. Artificial intelligence, hybrid work, accessibility, etc. And then there is dimension 5, which is about the so-called use cases. For each of the 21 competencies, we have examples of what the competence might mean at different proficiency levels in two scenarios. One is an employment scenario, and the other one is a learning scenario. Since we will see this more in details in my next presentation, I will stop here and propose you a new Mentimeter exercise. So based on what I have presented until now, I would like you to answer to two questions. Let's go first through the first one, which is there in your country a tool, a framework, such as DICOM, that provides a definition of digital competence to be used for the design of educational curricula and resources, of the design of competence assessment tools, and so forth? I would be very curious to hear, because there are many such examples, frameworks which are developed around the world. So I don't know the reality of your region, and I would be curious to hear about that. Okay. Well, let's say that I would say the prevailing answer seems to be not something similar maybe, but mostly no or don't know, which is fair. Okay. Would be interesting to compare these the existing frameworks that you're referring to the DICOM framework, and see. It's always very useful, as Alessandro said before. The DICOM itself was developed by analyzing and comparing a number of frameworks from all around the world. So it's always a very enriching task to do. Okay, thank you very much. And so I would now move on to the next questions, which is about, in your opinion, we have seen the different proficiency levels, and what should be the level to aim at for all citizens in your country? Okay. Can I have it? Green is the advanced level, violet middle. Okay, well, that's interesting. So most of you believe that the target should be, if I understand correctly, advanced or highly specialized. Now, again, of course, there is no right answer to this question, because the DICOM was designed as a flexible framework for the purpose of being adaptable to different contexts. And digital competence today, as we said before, is a key competence for life, for any aspect of life. But to what extent each individual should develop such competence really depends on on what they do in their life and what their needs are. So you may have, we have in Europe as a target to reach at least, let's say, it's called basic competence level, which corresponds to lower intermediate level in DCOMP for about 70% of the population within the next 5-6 years. So as you can see, today in Europe, about half of the population is below this intermediate level. So achieving the goals that you're envisaging here, it's a very ambitious, let's say, target, policy target. And as I said, it's the important thing to be aware of is that it's important that everyone develops a degree of digital competence, which is the level needed for their needs in their life. So it's probably it's important to envisage actions, policies which address different levels of digital competence, which can meet the needs of different categories of citizens. Especially, this is especially true in adult education. Okay, and so I have finished my first presentation. I think there are no questions as far as I understood. So let's move to the next step, which goes deeper into the DCOMP framework. And how do we do this? Well, the idea is to explore one specific area and understand how, when you look at the framework, what do you find in each area? I take one, but the structure is exactly the same for all 5 areas and 21 competencies. So as you see here, we have area 1, which is about information and data literacy. And you may remember there are 3 specific competencies in this area. The first one is browsing, searching, and filtering data, information, and digital content. The 1.2 is about evaluating this data, information, and digital content. And the third specific competence is about managing data, information, and digital content. So for each of these specific competences, the framework provides a description like the one that you see here. It's what I call a high-level description. Browsing, searching, and filtering data is defined as follows: to articulate information needs, to search for data, information, and content in digital environments, to access them and navigate between them, and to create and update personal search strategies. As you can see, these descriptors can be broken down into 4 distinct components. They articulate needs, the ability to search, the ability to access and navigate, and finally, the aspect of personal search strategies. So this you can do for all 21 competencies. You can break down the descriptors in a number of distinct components. There can be, some descriptors are very short, so you only have 1 component, and other descriptors are up to 4 or 5 components, but not longer. They're quite short, these descriptors. And we heard before that for each specific competence, we have from 10 to 15 examples. In the case of competence 1.1, as you can see, we have 5 knowledge examples, 6 skills examples, and 4 attitude examples. And I picked some of them. We cannot really go into all 15 of them, but this is just to give you an idea of what you find when you look into the DCOMP framework. So the first example is a knowledge example. And it says it's number one out of 250, knows that some online content in search result may not be open access or freely available and may require a fee or signing up for a service in order to access it. So relatively basic knowledge, but it's an important awareness because people might be, if they don't have this knowledge, they might be disappointed when they find search results with rich links, and when they try to access those to open those links and access those resources, they are requested to produce, to pay for something or to sign up for a service and so on. The second example is a skill example, number 7, which says knows how to improve search results by using a search engine's advanced features. For instance, specifying an exact phrase or selecting the language in which you want the results to be available or the region they come from, or if you want to have updated result, the date of last update of the resource that you're looking for. Again, this is not a very sophisticated skill, but well, knowing how to use these functions of search engines may require time, and increasingly these functions are very different and also very powerful. And the third example is an attitude example. So here we have number 13, values tools designed to protect search privacy and other rights of users. And in this case, an example was given to make people understand what we're talking about, such as DuckDuckGo, which is a search engine which is designed, it's a browser which is designed to protect the privacy of user, to control the cookies and tracking features of the tool. Then other examples, as I mentioned before, can be found in the dimension 5 of the framework, which are the use cases. And here I provide the two use cases. The first one is the employment scenario, and then we will see the learning scenario. In this case, the examples are given at foundation level. So the employment scenario in this case is about job seeking, looking for a job on the web, online. And you see the phrasing is with help from an employment advisor. And with help from an employment advisor is there because we are at foundation level. So at foundation level, you are able to do things, but with the help of someone. So in this case, it's an employment advisor. You can identify from a list those job portals which can help me to look for a job. So you can identify first. You can do a search and identify job portals which are relevant to you. You can also find these job portals in my smartphone's app store and access and navigate between them. So you are, this is, if you remember, was the second component of the descriptor. And finally, from a list of generic keywords for job seeking available in a blog on job hunting, I can also identify the keywords that are useful for me to perform an effective job search. And the second scenario is the learning scenario. At foundation level, in this case, the activity is to prepare a group work together with my classmates. And with the help of my teacher, or it could be with the help of a classmate, I can identify websites, blogs, and digital databases from a list in my digital textbook to look for literature on the report topic. I can also identify literature on the report topic in these websites, blogs, and digital databases and access them, and navigate among them. And then using a generic a list of generic keywords and tags available in my digital textbook, I can also identify those which would be useful for finding literature on the report topic. So again, as you can see, the examples in the use cases somehow walk through the components of the descriptors of the competence, but in a let's say real context. They explain how those descriptors can be applied in a specific context. Now, this is I think the last Mentimeter exercise. Based on what I just explained to you, the statements that you will see are taken from the DICOM-SAT report, which is a report produced always by the European Commission to design a self-assessment tool, and can be found also in another self-assessment tool, which is called MyDigi Skills, available online. And I would like you to identify which of these items are associated with knowledge, skills, and attitude. Now, sorry, I said a Mentimeter, but in fact, we're not having a Mentimeter exercise here. I will read each one of these items, leave you a few seconds to decide which is the right answer, and then I will let you know. So the first statement is, I know how to find a website I have visited before. What is this according to you? A knowledge, skills, or an attitude item? Okay, it's a skills attitude. I know how. Second one, I know that different search engines may give different search results because they are influenced by commercial factors. So what kind of item is this according to you? This is a knowledge item. I know that. Third item, I critically check if the information I find online is reliable. What kind of item is this? This is an attitude item. I critically check if the information I find online is reliable. Fourth item, I know which words to use in order to find what I need quickly. For instance, to search online or within a document. What kind of item is this? This is a knowledge item. And finally, when I use a search engine, I can take advantage of its advanced features. What do you think it's this item? I can take advantage. It's a skill item. Okay, I don't know how many of you got it, but this is just to show you how these different types of items, in this case, items of this kind were identified, developed to create, to design an assessment, a digital competence assessment tool. So I move to the last part of my presentation, which is about the use of DICOMP. How is this framework that we have described, that we have seen until now, how is it used? You remember that Alessandro mentioned those researches that the Commission did after a few years that DICOMP was around. We did two studies, one which was across all kinds of usages and sectors, and the second one which was focused on employability, employment world. And based on the first study, which produced the report called DICOMP into Action, we came up with this overall DICOMP implementation cycle, which now this as you can see, there are 5 steps. This doesn't mean that when you use DICOMP, you have to do all 5 steps. Some projects, some initiatives actually go through the whole process. Other simply develop one or the other of these steps. So let's start from step 1, which is about the adaptation and specification of the framework. You have seen before with the examples that we provided, the difference that there is between the descriptors of dimension 2, and the examples. And the examples that we gave are just examples. I mean, they are 250, and you can imagine how many different possibilities of examples there are in the world. So the adaptation and specification of the DCOMP framework is a crucial step when you want to apply, use the framework in a specific context with a specific target group, population, which might be of students, adults, more or less educated, professionals working in a given domain, and so on and so forth. And you cannot take the framework as such as it is because it's too general. So you have to adapt it. And this adaptation and specification can take place in different levels. The first adaptation, in fact, is the translation of DCOMP. DCOMP was not was written in English and was not translated as the European Commission often does. There is the European Commission translation services which translate into all the EU languages. In the case of DCOMP, this was not done, and it was left up to the different member states to decide to translate and carry out the work. So we have many translations of DCOMP, but not all languages, European languages are covered. And this translation is not a trivial task. It's because, again, the wording of DCOMP sometimes is quite abstract, general. So translating it in an effective way is not so simple. This is the first step: adaptation, translation, specification with reference to a specific target group, a specific sector, domain, etc. Then, based on this specified framework, usually has many examples, learning outcomes, and so on, depending on what you're doing, very often projects develop assessment tools. You have a target group, a segment of the population, a professional group, and so on, and you want to understand what is their current level of digital competence. So you design an assessment tool, and DCOMP is very useful in this respect because it gives you a structure. You have the 5 areas, 21 competence to look at, and it gives you the proficiency levels and so on. So it's DCOMP has been used very often to design competence assessment tools that are used before any kind of the digital competence development activities, which is the third step. Third step is about training trainers. Well, this is something we didn't expect when we started looking around how DCOMP was used, but we discovered, and it's not so, if you think of it, it's not so strange. As I said, DCOMP proposes a different approach to digital competence. It's not about training someone on using a office package or on some software tool. It's a different thing. It's about developing a critical skills. It's about assessing information. It's about being creative, learning to develop digital content, and so on. So trainers who started using DCOMP said, but well, we don't know how to teach these things. It's different. It's a different activity than the traditional ICT, IT training that they were used to. So many initiatives actually started working on developing training the trainers' activities, and we are still carrying that on. Then, of course, we move to the core of the application, the use of DCOMP, which is developing a training offer for end users. And as I said before, any kind of target group. And DCOMP can be very useful is used to design a curriculum, to identify the learning content, to design materials, and to classify, to tag this material using the DCOMP categories to make it easier for other people to reuse it. And finally, the last step, once you have delivered your training, very often you have at least the recognition of the acquired learning. So some kind of exam test that is done to show that the learners learned something through the process. And this can lead up to the certification, to a proper certification. We are currently running a project with the European Commission, which is called, it's a feasibility study for the European Digital Skills Certificate. The idea is to come up with a general scheme, certification scheme, setting quality and content requirements to make the certificates produced, issued in different countries by different actors comparable and interoperable between them. So this is it. Again, you will find in the slides that will be distributed, I put here some links to useful resources for the DICOMP framework. Some of them were mentioned already by Alessandro as well. And I just want to conclude by mentioning this new project, which just started in January this year. It's called the DICOMP Hub. And it's a project, it's an Erasmus Plus project funded by the European Commission, which will last until June 2025, with some partners from all around Europe, as it's always the case, and in particular, All Digital, which is an association, which is the coordinator of this project, and it's an association which gathers all the many thousands of entities around Europe who do digital education activities, mostly non-formal education, mostly for adults, but also for young people. And this project has three main goals: is to support and further develop the DigiComp COP. We call it the DigiComp Community of Practice, which is an online environment, which is already open. It has already about 800 members from all around the world, which meet in this environment. They're all people who work on digital education and who share an interest in DICOMP. And so the one goal of this project is to support this community. A second goal is to design and pilot a short online training and mentoring program for adult training providers. So it's again a train the trainers activity. Here we have adult education and trainers. And on the content of this training is something like what I did today. What is DICOMP and how can you use it in your activity? And the third line of the activity of this project is communication and dissemination activities to raise awareness about DICOMP and its potential contribution in the transformation of education and training for digital competence all around Europe. So this is it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you understood and learned something about the DICOMP framework. And as I've showed you, you have plenty of resources if you want to go deeper and study this very interesting and useful framework. So, thank you very much.
Спасибо вам большое, Стефано. До того, как продолжать с вопросами или с комментариями, я хотела бы попросить Анну, которая следит за комментариями за Zoom, немножко делиться тому, что она видела, что говорят наши коллеги, которые не с нами в Zoom.
Спасибо, Кристин. Да, мы получили пару комментариев на один из слайдов, отвечая на вопрос, какой шаг в реализации DICOMP кажется вам самым сложным. Куляй Марахатова ответила, что самый сложный, по ее мнению, это 4-й, обучение конечного пользователя, но, однако, он приводит к результату. И также интересный, своеобразный комментарий от Ад Кармель, что сложность на самом деле также скрывается в разности в менталитете и культуре. То есть даже такие аспекты мы должны иметь в виду. Спасибо, Кристин.
Спасибо большое, Анна, и спасибо тем коллегам, которые высказались и делились. Это очень важный опыт. Стефано, может быть, вы комментируете, потому что вы следили в течение многих лет о том, как реально внедряется в совсем разных странах и в разных уровнях. Так что вы можете реагировать на эти комментарии, где сложности и вот разные применения культура. Может ли рамка помочь с этим?
Okay, I have say two questions. One about, let's start from this last one about the complexity of working in different cultures. Now, yes, of course, and it's not, it's not just an issue of different cultures. Very often this is the experience when you put around the table a group of people. They may be from the same country, so they share, let's say, broadly the same culture, but they come from different, for instance, ministries. They come from Minister of Education, they come from the Minister of Digital Transformation, they come from the Minister of Labor, and so on. And these people, even though they speak the same language and they come from the same country, very often they have a hard time understanding each other because they use a different language. They have a different understanding of things. And that's where DCOMP helps a lot. And like Alessandro said at the beginning, DCOMP helps create a common language and understanding of what we mean by digital competence. So even each people they might be from different countries, or might be from the same countries, but from different professional backgrounds or educational backgrounds. Working around DCOMP means accepting, somehow adapting if needed, of course, a language and a way and a meaning. It's not just about words, it's about the meaning of these words. And it's basically, you are creating a common understanding, a common language of talking about these things, which is very important. So you cannot take it for granted. It's not just a matter of learning by heart, the definition, the descriptors. It's really a matter of sharing, of confronting, of discussing and understanding and agreeing on a common definition. And DCOMP supports this process. Doesn't guarantee its success, but it supports it. And which leads me to the second, which was the first question you asked about which of the steps is the most difficult one. Well, all of them are difficult for one reason or another. But I would say that the first step, the adaptation and specification of the framework, is probably the more challenging one, exactly for the reasons that I just gave. Because you have to put together people who are not used often to work together and work on the common goal, on the common topic. So this takes time very often, and iterations. You go through an idea, then you go to the end and you discover that it was not accurate enough, or you left something out, so you have to go back and integrate and rediscuss and so on. So I would probably say that the most difficult part is the specification one.
Спасибо, Стефано. Я вижу, что есть еще один вопрос, который задал Марат Исабеков. Марат, я могу, естественно, читать этот вопрос, но, может быть, что вы хотите сами его высказать. Марат, вы с нами?
Да, добрый день, спасибо. Спасибо за презентацию. Ну, вот я там указал, да, хотелось бы узнать, вот 250 сценариев, я так понимаю, они раскрывают содержание указанных дескрипторов. Для того, чтобы теперь оценивать соответствие или определять уровень, дополнительно разрабатываются задачи, тестовые вопросы, или вы обходитесь 250 сценариями?
Стефано?
Okay, well, the 250 are examples, not the scenarios. Luckily, are just two, the ones that we developed, the one on employment and learning scenarios. But the examples, yes, there are 250. And as I said before, these 250 are examples. So they're not all the possible examples, of course. So this is something you can use those examples if you think they're relevant in the context of the work that you're doing, but you can definitely add new examples from a given, for instance, for a specific professional context, or examples. The examples, for instance, I didn't say this, but the examples of dimension 4, they are not associated to proficiency levels. So the examples, they give examples of knowledge, skills, and attitude, but they don't say this example is level foundation, intermediate, advanced. It's just an example. This is probably a step that at some point we will do but it hasn't been done yet. And this is, for instance, something that becomes necessary when you want to design, for instance, an assessment tool, because the items that you create, the examples, you have to decide at which proficiency level you associate them to. And in this respect, again, the framework helps because it gives you the general criteria from moving from one level to the other. But if you go and look, when you will read the descriptors of dimension 3 of the 8 proficiency levels, you will see that again, those descriptors are quite abstract, quite high level. So they need to be specified, to be operationalized. And this is, this is you could consider it a limitation, but it's also the strength of DICOMP. It's a limitation because unfortunately, you cannot take DICOMP as it was a standard and apply it as it is. So it's a limitation. DICOMP requires work to be used. On the other hand, it's the positive aspect of DICOMP, which is it's a framework which has a structure, a solidity, but it's very flexible because it can be adapted. It's not a standard in this respect. And so I don't know if I answered to your question, but yes, I mean, examples, it's very important to be aware, and we wrote it clearly in DICOMP 2.2 that you cannot take the examples as the whole range of digital competencies. Also because, as I said, these examples were used also to introduce in the DICOMP framework new themes, artificial intelligence, remote working, and these kind of topics. But there are many others which are not in the examples and which are relevant. So once you start using the framework, you inevitably will have to maybe reuse some of those examples, but also create your own.
Спасибо большое, Стефано. В этом моменте я не вижу дополнительных вопросов, но еще раз приглашаю всех, вы можете и комментировать то, что вы слышали. Если у вас есть конкретные вопросы, вы можете их задать в чате. И сейчас мы переходим к иллюстрации о том, как в реальной жизни используют DIGCOMP. Я вижу, что есть наши коллеги из Туркменистана, если я это вижу, потому что наши коллеги из Туркменистана сидят совместно в комнате, поэтому, так что, пожалуйста, коллеги, зададите свой вопрос или комментарий.
Здравствуйте.
Вы отключили ваш микрофон. Сейчас, пожалуйста, ваш вопрос.
Слышно, да? Хорошо, спасибо большое. Это огромное спасибо за то, что вот мы в рамках такой, так сказать, программы сегодня встретились, и причем при содействии 5 центральноазиатских республик. Очень приятно. И дело в том, что вот нас интересует такой маленький нюанс по поводу DICOMP, а именно цифровая доступность для людей именно с ограниченными возможностями. Что в рамках DICOMP было вот именно, какие вообще вы можете привести примеры, да, может быть, какие-либо достижения в этом направлении, нас этот нюанс очень интересует, да, что было сделано вот именно в рамках DICOMP для людей с ограниченными возможностями. Спасибо.
Спасибо вам большое за вопрос. Стефано, можете ли вы нам разъяснить вот этот очень специфический уклон?
Okay, yeah. No, thank you very much for asking this question, because I didn't go through all the aspects, but accessibility, which is the word that we use for referring to the access of people which may have any kind of physical or also cognitive impairments to digital technology is a very important aspect. Very important aspect. And
коллеги, пожалуйста, отключайте свой микрофон, если мы видим и мы слышим коллеги, которые не выключили. Спасибо. Стефано, please.
Okay. Yes, sorry. I was saying that thank you for this question, because accessibility is one of the aspects that was given particular attention in the DCOM 2.2 report. And I would say this in two ways. First of all, we introduced a number of examples which have to do exactly with accessibility issues. Accessibility is digital accessibility is the term that we use to refer to the possibility guaranteeing the possibility to access to digital technology and services, also to people who may have some kind of difficulty, physical impairments, not necessarily people which are fully disabled. I mean, elderly people who have problems with the sight, for instance. So accessibility was taken into account explicitly. There are a number of examples which are highlighted as related to accessibility. And also, we created the digital version of the report. The DCOM 2.2 version is a fully accessible version. So if you download or read the digital version of the DCOM 2.2, it has been made to be perfectly accessible through text readers and other tools which are used by people who may have some disability. So, and this is, and I must say, it was for all of us a very interesting experience, because we didn't expect that it would be so, let's say, also complicated to produce something which is really accessible for everyone. And so it took some time and effort to do it, but we did it. And also we wanted to pass a very strong message through the DCOM 2.2, which is that today accessibility is not anymore just a matter of IT professionals who design website or create tools which need to be accessible. And this is, of course, has to be done. But it's an issue today for all of us, because we are all of us, we are also producers of digital content. As I said before, we post messages, we post photos, we publish all kinds of digital content. And it's important that everyone becomes aware that the way they do these things can make a difference. You can do things in a way which is more accessible or less accessible. And the vast majority of people, starting from myself, I didn't know these things. I discovered them, I learned them while we were working on the DCOM 2.2. It can be done. So we believe it's an important component today of digital competence, being aware of accessibility and how each one of us can contribute to it.
Спасибо вам большое, Стефано, и спасибо за этот хороший вопрос. Еще раз хотела всех пригласить задать свои вопросы. Это самый хороший момент сейчас, чтобы получить ответы от наших коллег, которые в течение многих лет работают в этой сфере, в совсем разных ракурсах. Я хотела объяснить, может быть, что-то важное, потому что в Центральной Азии вам хорошо известна программа Erasmus для высшего образования. Я здесь хотела бы разъяснить, что внутри Европейского Союза программа Erasmus используется, во-первых, не только для высшего образования, но и для того, чтобы выявить новые возможные ракурсы. Она также используется для обучения, в ракурсе обучения взрослых. Так что это такой инструмент, который потом основана на DigComp, может разъяснить какие-то очень специфические вопросы. Стефано объяснил о DigComp Hub. Да? Здесь упор делается именно на образование взрослых. Но есть очень много проектов Erasmus, которые именно выяснят, как дальше двигать вопрос цифровых навыков для совсем разных студентов. И я думаю, что мы можем специально искать тоже, если в связи с внедрением мы найдем специфический проект именно для сферы цифровых навыков для студентов с ограниченными возможностями. Если мы найдем, мы обязательно вам сообщим. Спасибо еще раз, Стефано. Сейчас я хотела бы перейти к следующей части нашего вебинара. И это уже обмен опытом о том, как очень реально применяется, используется Digicom, который является рамкой, для того, чтобы развивать определенные сферы цифровых навыков для разных граждан. И я сейчас попрошу Грацию Германди нас ввести в курс дела, как в регионе, в котором она живет и работает с Digicom именно в сфере развития цифровых навыков для всех граждан. Грация, please, the floor is yours. И еще раз попрошу всех зададите ваши вопросы, чтобы мы знали, да, где надо еще что-то выяснить, какие ракурсы вам интересны. Grazie, please, the floor is yours. And I will share your slides.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, good morning to all of you. I should say probably good afternoon because of the time difference. I'm very pleased to participate to this meeting organized by the European Training Foundation. I work for an Italian region. So maybe you can go to the next page. So we can, I would like you to visualize where we are. I'm in Bologna, which is considered in the north of Italy. Our region is, I could say, a big region in Italy, but as compared to your countries, probably is very small. For sure, it's very small, but we have 4.5 million inhabitants, and we are based in Bologna. Maybe you know Bologna because of the university, because it's considered one of the oldest, if not the oldest, university in the world. It's an issue. I'm talking here of a project called Pane and Internet in Italian. In English could be translated as bread and internet. This project has been started in 2009, so quite some time ago. At that point, our citizens in our region, our people who were residents, most of them were not connected to internet. We had, I think, the 50% of the population outside, you know, the internet, the web, and all the services connected. Now the situation is clearly very different. So the majority of people are able to connect and to do important things for their life using the web. They can use, of course, web services. They are able to connect to public services. They are able to do important things and also to get information online, which is very important, and it's very connected with the Digicom framework. So our idea was to try to promote the culture of the digital culture in different ways. I can summarize in this way. We had the idea of creating a network of people in our region, mostly based on municipalities, working with us for promoting our training offers. So let's say that the main goal was to create and promote a broad training offer for the citizens of the Emilia-Romagna. This training offer was based and is still based on the Digicom framework. A second goal was to promote generally the acquisition of the competence, digital competence, because digital competence sometimes is not even considered as a need. If you have people who are really, really far from the use of technologies, maybe they don't consider important to get into this new world. So in some ways, you have to make a sort of sensibilization through volunteers, and through networks of people who could be the, let's say, the key subjects of the inclusion. As I was mentioning before, another important dimension was the creation of a local network with public libraries, which could be a very important subject in promoting a digital culture. I don't know if any of you come from works or collaborate with public libraries, but for sure libraries are considered special places for, you know, promoting the acquiring of the basic skills, the skills that you need in life for learning and acquiring new information. A fourth important focus of PAN Internet, Bread and Internet, was to get in touch with fragile targets. There are some people who are more fragile as compared to others. In our case, in our region, these people could be people who are living in remote areas, like the mountain areas, people with very low educational levels, and also people who are old, because these people really are in trouble in, you know, run and get new skills on digital, especially digital skills. So the target citizens are basically, the target citizens of PAN Internet are basically, we didn't specify an age, because we knew that some people who are not able to use technologies could be also young. At a certain point, we had a sort of, I wouldn't say an economical crisis, but there were some problems in terms of economy. So we started having lots of unemployed people who weren't young, but these people were around their 50s, so they weren't even old, but they needed to acquire digital skills, basic digital skills, in order to find a new job. So it's difficult to define only the age as a major problem. The age could be a problem, but also the economical situation in which you find there are many, you know, many different variables that could bring you to be outside the digital world. Anyways, for sure, people with digital skills are a target. I would say with very little digital skills, at the very beginning in PAN Internet, we had also people who had no skills at all. So people who were really, really not connected to any device, to any network. And another important target, I think, is to work with, but in a different way, is to work with volunteers. Young volunteers are young, but also of other ages, could be very important if you want to develop activities of digital literacy for citizens. Young people can learn something important also by this experience, so it's a sort of exchange, a very, you know, positive exchange. I'm talking about this later. We can move to the forward. The region Emilia-Romagna, as I told you, is a region. The region is an interesting level of government for this kind of project, because we are quite big but not huge. So our work was to first of all to start up a network of local points for promoting digital skills for citizens. We tried also to get in touch with these people, because they are more connected with us, with citizens. The region is let's say a government, a regional government. We are very much in connection with the local level, which is organized through the municipalities in Emilia-Romagna. And so that was an important part of our work, set up this network and provide this organization with tools, educational resources, projects, something ready to be used with the citizens. we had in mind to use a framework, but when we started, we didn't have a common framework for developing digital skills. In 2009, we didn't have any framework. So we were very happy to use a common framework. It was easier for us. It's true that you have to work, but it's easier because you don't have to, dream what you're going to do. You have some, paths. I can give you some numbers, Mike. You can see this network was quite various. There were municipalities, schools, volunteers, teachers, and tutors. So I can go straight on the intermediaries, the next slide. It's very, I think it's something that I would like to share with you. I think it's very important, whatever you're going to do in your practice, to develop a collaboration network. We call this network of intermediaries. It's something that has been, there was a lot of, there are many experiences in Europe of the role of the intermediaries. Stefano knows most of them. Anyways, it's important to enroll people, not only citizens, but people who are able to help you in doing your job. This is important. I think it's a key factor of any activity, at least if you want to cover a big territory, and I'm sure your territory is bigger than mine. From 2012, we had the pandemic, so of course we had to change a little bit the delivery of our activities. So we started organizing courses not only on site but also online. But we used intermediaries to promote our online offer of training. I think this is interesting for you too. You can use this you can let's say collaborate with these intermediaries like association, libraries, municipalities, schools, not only for organizing physical stuff in that place, but also for promoting digital activities with the people to whom they are connected. I would say that in terms of, I would go straight on our training offer, which is for sure focused on some areas, on some relevant dimensions. But what I want to show you is this. It's true, the Digital gives you some dimensions that Stefano was describing, and it's useful to have them, but you can also translate or propose your training offer in different terms. Nothing is mandatory, and this is good, I think, for you who are trainers, people who like, a little bit also to creatively think about what you're doing. So we had done our courses based on Digital. We organized events and courses. Events are very short, courses are longer. We definitely used the Digital competencies, but when we explained our activities to citizens, we used other names for our areas because we thought it was easier to them to understand. So this is for telling you that it's adaptable. You can adapt to your target, to your language. So nothing is mandatory. And this, I think, is positive. I'm going to finish the presentation with a couple of two things. We can switch to the next. I want to stress something that could be interesting for you. I think that the digital facilitation, it's something that could be useful in any project that you organize with people. Sorry, there's someone with a microphone open. And so what is this? When you organize training activities to people with very low digital skills, they need usually more help after when the course is finished, they need help. So it's good, and I think we had this experience. It was quite spread, and it was also, various. We used various models, but I want to tell you to provide some digital facilitation for your citizens. It could be based on volunteers, young volunteers. Maybe you can enroll them in schools. It could be based on let's say, a sort of civil service, which is something that we are doing here in Italy at the broader level with also the recovery and resilience plan, which is a specific program from Italy. And intergenerational training could be a plus, because there is the need of communicating, there is the need of interacting with young people in a positive and in a also transformative way. So this is something that maybe you can explore and try to see if it's useful in your environment. I will finish with a picture, which is the last picture of my presentation. Christine, I don't know if you can go to the next one, which is showing something actually happening in Emilia-Romagna, in Rimini, which is quite a famous place. It's on the seaside. It's in a library. Here you can see young people helping citizens with devices using their smartphone. I don't know if you can change. I'm not able to move to the next one, but digital facilitation can be easily done with the help of young volunteers. So I don't know if you have any question. I'm available. I don't see Christine anymore. Here you are, Christine.
I have to apologize.
No worries.
Я извиняюсь, у меня блокировалась презентация. Сейчас я надеюсь, что потом мы можем показать это фото. Я хотела сказать, что есть один вопрос в чате.
No worries.
Где вопрос, почему выбран именно этот регион. Это Дин Мухаммед Сулейман. Может быть, вы уточните ваш вопрос о том, если такие же проекты есть в других регионах, или вы можете уточнить этот вопрос, пожалуйста? Можете открыть микрофон, пожалуйста.
Yeah.
Сулейман Дин Мухаммед, вы писали вопрос в чате, почему выбран именно этот регион. Грация. Я думаю, что я предполагаю, что есть такие же проекты в других регионах Италии. Правильно? Каждый регион определяет, что делает. Уточните, пожалуйста, какая функция региона и...
Yeah, it's the same. It's like this. Every region has different projects, and we are using regional funds for that. So you can find probably now from 2023 to 2026, there are going to be more national projects under the big umbrella of the Recovery and Resilience Plan. Before that, the majority of the region has carried out different projects, usually with schools or volunteers. And the Emilia-Romagna has started maybe earlier than others. And I think we have been called because Inter is considered a best practice at the European and the national level, but for sure there are other regions very active on this side.
Спасибо вам, Грация. Так что еще, коллеги, пожалуйста, выключайте микрофоны. Коллеги, пожалуйста, выключайте свой микрофон. Окей, так что ответ в том, что каждый регион – это привилегия региона, да, как работать в этой сфере. И поскольку я понимаю, существует обмен опытом между регионами, иногда регионы решают повторить или делать что-то похожее, если есть хороший опыт, но в этом случае каждый регион Италии в этой сфере сам определяет, что делать, и имеет для этого свои ресурсы. Правильно, Грация?
Добрый день.
Yeah, it's true. Consider that even if we are very small, regions in Italy are very different because we have different levels of, the also economical growth. We have a big difference between, the north and the south. So some policies are undertaken by the state in general, but others could be, organized at the regional level. The region is an intermediate level between, the state and the very local level. So we were quite, our project was included, for example, in a digital agenda, regional digital agenda that we had. So that's why we started, implementing this policy for citizens. The digital agenda, there's a national digital agenda, let's say a strategy, and every region decides what to do in their specific territories. This is because, for example, Milan could be extremely advanced, just for saying, or Turin could be more advanced for some ways than other areas in other regions. So let's say that we have different velocities. It's not the same Italy, it's different. At the same time, you can find also some very specific aspect of the territory. In some ways, you have lots of mountains, so situation could be very different from an Italian island. So this was just for, trying to introduce you the problem of setting up only one big project in Italy. It's very, it's more useful to, work also at the, let's say, regional and local level.
Спасибо, Грация. Сейчас идут вопросы, как раз у нас немножко сложно со временем. Ананор, вы поднимали руку, озвучайте, пожалуйста, свой вопрос, но может быть, что мы потом через дополнительные интервью с Грацией, которые мы будем поставить в интернет, вам ответим. Но зададите, пожалуйста, свой вопрос. Я вижу, что Гулджамал тоже писала, какие трудности были в реализации проекта. Ананор, пожалуйста, озвучайте свой вопрос.
Можно я на английском буду говорить или...
Вы хотите, вы можете говорить по-английски или по-русски, как вам удобнее.
Все, спасибо. Good afternoon, Mrs. Grazia. Thank you. First of all, thank you for such a good presentation. And I have one question. And I want to ask that, does government support such a programs that like you are doing now?
Yeah.
Or
let's say the regional government in this case, okay? The regional government, because we have, a central, nationwide, but also regional. Consider that the regional government is, able to specify some specific programs for the digital development. And this is not only for the skills, but also for the infrastructures. So if you need, more infrastructures, we have, for example, lots of mountains, not as much as you, but probably in our region, there are some mountains. So that's a structural part, for example, of our digital agenda. Try to have better connections in the mountains because it's an issue. So yeah, definitely the regional government is able to provide some resources to this project. Okay.
Спасибо большое, Грация. Есть еще один вопрос, но у нас истекло время, поэтому еще раз в конце буду объявить, что мы будем ответить на этот вопрос онлайн, но после вебинара. Так что ответ будет вам доступен. Спасибо вам за хорошие вопросы. И сейчас я хотела бы перейти на совсем другой пример из другой сферы. Грация представила сферу, скажем, доступности цифровых навыков для граждан. И с нами сегодня тоже есть коллеги от Министерства образования и науки Украины, Роман Шиян и Оксана, Оксана, Я вас не вижу.
Оксана Пасечник.
Пасечник, я очень извиняюсь, слишком много коллег на экране. Оксана, я извиняюсь. Они будут нас вести в курсе дела, как в Украине внедряют цифровую компетенцию, но не только цифровую компетенцию, да, как ключевую компетенцию. Так что, Роман и Оксана, я вам передам слово, и это очень интересный пример. И, пожалуйста, коллеги, снова ваши вопросы в чате. Роман, Оксана, пожалуйста, делитесь своей презентацией.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Maybe good evening even, because this 4 years, 4 hours distance in between of Ukraine and Central Asia is already. But we accept this challenge to be last presenters, last speakers during this event. Me and Oksana Pasechnik, and we are going to tell you the story how all of this works at the level of general secondary education. I am now sharing my screen. I hope you see that.
Yes.
Well, this is actually already a long story. We started just after the Revolution of Dignity, where we have found the window of opportunity and political will to make the reform in general secondary education, and we are going to explain you only those parts of the reform which is relevant to national core curriculum development. So we started 2016 with a general view on the concept of national core curriculum development, and actually it was our idea to make to use this holistic approach and to develop 1-12 or even K-12 national core curriculum based on competencies. But actually, situation were developed, and 2 years later, we moved to we were concentrated on primary education, and actually it is already introduced all over Ukraine, this first 4 years of general secondary education. And now we have started to implement the second one, the basic education, which is 5th, 9th grade. And this last, let's say, part of this trilogy is already under development. And this is so-called profile general education, this upper secondary education part of general education. Before that, a concept was introduced, and you can find it on ministerial website till now. This is the two version, English and Ukrainian, are still there. And it was the first try to actually introduce this two-dimensional approach first, the key competencies versus so-called transversal skills. And then later on, you will see that the third dimension will also come. Now I'm going to quote the very important part for us. Just last page.
Roman, the slides are not changing. We are still seeing the first slide.
First slide?
Yeah.
Why it's like that? Maybe I'll stop share and try again.
Maybe, yeah. It sometimes happens.
Yeah. I will try, thank you.
I had lots of problems today with slides not moving, so
that's all digital competence, you know.
Yeah, you should always make an
Roman,
exercise.
should I try sharing?
Maybe I'll try again, and then we'll decide.
I will open it just in case.
So now you can see my first slide now, and second one.
No, nothing.
You can see nothing. So you maybe
Roman, I will try and share.
You please. Okay, everybody can see those slides now.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, so I already explained this dynamic of our search. And next slide is next slide, please, Christine. It is oh well, I cannot see it. Then again, this one. We actually, I just explained that the concept was already introduced, this two-dimensional approach where key competences and transversal skills were introduced. And next slide, please. I was going to quote the document. Actually, you have a link here. And this key competence was for lifelong learning official EU document, and it's very important part of it on the last page with footnotes, because when you start to work with the key competences, you immediately have an answer from the audience how we are going to introduce it into the study program, and how to you are going to assess them. And the answer is here. When the description of key competencies are translating into a framework of learning outcomes, and then you can develop, based on that, you can develop the tools for diagnostics and formal and summative assessments and so on. So actually, and in footnotes went us to those sources. You can see on this and the next slide, please. We were elaborating all those sources. It was actually very exciting exercise because we actually literally cutted all those cells on big tables and decided collegially how to attribute it to different level of education and different cycles of education. I make the remark that we have in primary education, we have two cycles, first, second, third, fourth. Then we have fifth, sixth, fourth grade, and 7th, 9th grade during basic education, and the same in upper secondary, 10th and 11th, 12th. So at the end of so those learning outcomes from all of that, almost all of that frameworks, because we didn't elaborate green comp yet, and those life comp was elaborated later. So we have actually started with intercomp and means entrepreneurial key competence, and the dig comp. We also were working with the democracy, actually civic framework came from Council of Europe. So, and the next slide will show you the general concept of so-called competence potential. So we've decided that third dimension is coming. So the list of so-called educational areas or educational branches, if we are call it here, and we have a concept that each area, each subject area or educational area can make its own contribution into all key competencies development from those lists. We have this 8 key competences in EU list, and it's slightly modified in Ukrainian one. You can even find this list in the law of education. There are 11 instead of 8 key competencies for new Ukrainian school, and it's attributed for general secondary education, not for lifelong learning in that law of education. And we have the difference is that innovation is distinguished there, and also ecological competence is separated separated there, and some other less important variety we have in this comparatively with the original European one, which means that we work with European with some modification. So, and the list of already mentioned subject area are you can see here. And we actually cutted those learning outcomes from the lists from the frameworks, and attributed them to each subject area. And actually, next slide, please. So the very important point to make a balance inside of the competence. So we were focused more on skills, and it's important to explain the audience that knowledge are also there, so they are not at risk, because it's a point of bias to keep knowledge in the agenda. The next slide, please. So when we use this national core curriculum, this standard for education for different for different levels of education, and start to use study program, we are putting all those mandatory learning outcomes as an expected outcomes into study programs for each subject, or for each subject within or in between of different certain subject area. Then we add the content and learning activity there, and it works in reality. And I do hope that Oksana will open us, share with us the secret knowledge how it works in reality in the classroom.
Yes, thank you, Roman. I will be happy to share the practical viewpoint on all of this, because it is important to have the helicopter view about all the competences and all the subjects and how it's going to work in the case of national curriculum. But I'm sure that we have many practical questions, and I'm happy to share with you some of those. Here on this slide, you can see the structure of the digital competence. I'm sure we have seen it today multiple times, and I'm not going to stop on that. But still, I would like to mention how it is mapped onto actual study programs. Therefore, as I am a teacher of computer science, it is quite easily to map digital competence onto a computer science or informatics subject area. As far as I'm aware, many countries in Central Asia have such a subject in their school curriculum, and maybe you will correct me if I'm wrong. So actually, while the representation of digital competence can be found in a quite typical computer science or informatics topics, frankly, they still need to be a little bit adapted to fully reflect the competence approach. Because, for example, if we are still learning about information and data, which is like a typical subject for computer science, we learn about ones and zeros and how information is coded and stuff like that. But also, we are learning about critical evaluation of information we are getting from different sources, including the data we are getting from artificial intelligence systems. So actually, we are just adding a new aspect to the topics we are already covering to make sure that they are relevant and they are competence, they are digital competence based. While we are learning about tools to cooperate online, we also learn about how actually teamwork is organized online. So it's not just about tools, but it's about their application. It's also about digital citizenship, when we are seeing the digital world as a reflection of society we live in, and actually the one we want to live in actively and productively. When we talk about safety and responsibility to keep our online space secure and supporting well-being for us and for others, we just learn not about tools, about creating text or graphics or movies or anything like that, or writing computer code. We are doing that in order to solve some problems with the use of digital tools, to create informational products that are going to solve the problems in an innovative way. So it's all about problem solving in real life. That's the whole point of the subject area of informatics, and actually the other areas as well. And as Roman mentioned, those statements should be directly written into learning outcomes. That's where we can find them. That's where teachers can read them and actually make sure that they are transferred into their content and into their classroom practices. As a teacher myself, I know very well that teachers have a lot on their plate. So they are not really enthusiastic about something being added to their curriculum, to their workload. But the point with competences is not about something extra. It's about something that is helping teachers to answer the question that we are hearing all the time. Why do we need to learn this or that? Why do we need to learn the certain formula? Why do we need to learn certain theorem? How we are going to apply it in our real life? And I'm sure that teachers all over the world are hearing this question in different variations. And competences is actually the answer to that question. Because with competences, we can connect our classroom material, our content, our knowledge, which is actually a part of the competence as well, to the real life, to the problem solving that we are going to face when we grow up. For example, if we are having lessons in a native language, we can make sure that we are touching issues of netiquette and communicating safely online in an online space. It's not about just using your language in real life. It's also about using the same language online with respect to others. When we have a lesson on science, we are engaging with modern tools to explore the environment or do our research. And those tools are digital based, and that is the reality we live in. When we are learning about new devices, we also think about how they are going to be ecologically recycled. What is the ecological footprint of our innovations? And this is something, again, not extra, but those are aspects of digital competences that are added to multiple subject areas, so that many teachers can come to the same problem, to the same issue, and show our students that what they are learning is not a separate thing. It is something very complex, and preparing them for future challenges. What is important is that we see this not only as other subjects teaching something about digital competences. It's also about computer science subject or informatics subject, enriching other competences as well. For example, in a computer science, we know a lot of terminology is coming from English-speaking languages. So when we are talking about the importance of being competent in digital area, we also touch about importance of learning foreign languages in order to communicate online, for example. When we talk about social and civic competence, it is closely interweaved with digital competence, with creating the concept of digital citizenship, which looks into how we can make online digital world a safe, responsible, and active community. We actually cannot forget about entrepreneurship when we are talking about practicing digital skills and creating informational products. So it is all very interweaved. And in practice, all these competences, all these subjects, all these different viewpoints are just creating a pretty strong fabric which supports our students on their way to become skillful and competent citizens of tomorrow. On this, I would like to actually stop my presentation and give the word back to Roman to finish it off. Thank you.
So just last slide, please. And actually, this story during last year, at least, is about resistance, resilience, and recovery. And we still see this window of opportunity, and even think to accelerate the reform, introducing next steps even earlier than it was planned. And the key competences is a core of this new curriculum, which we are trying to implement in the real life, as Oksana just explained. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roman and Oksana, for this insight. I think this is a really amazing development, how you have introduced multiple key competences and how this has advanced so far in a short period by education measures. And I hope that we will have the opportunity in the future to hear more about this. Thank you very much to everyone. I do not for the moment see questions. I think we tried, as always, to pack many things in a relatively short session. Anna, do you see any questions from your side? No, no comment at this stage. No. So I would like to thank at this point all speakers. I see a question from the ICT Center. ICT Center, can you please voice your question, and then, or if you can put it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Talat Numanov. I am from Tajikistan, a member of Adult Education Board. And here is question. I see one question in Russian language from Dinara Kapitonova. Can we take record of this session to our email or something this like? Can we receive this audio video record to us? That, because I'm so sorry I late also, and I would like to hear again what was speak in this session.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very good question, and I was about to share insights in that actually with you. Next steps and about sharing, etc. First of all, I would like to thank all the colleagues who have shared their insight about the framework in general, how it's developed, how it's being used, the multiple ways in which it's being used, and then in particular, Grazia, Roman, and Oksana, because in the end, really, I think the great wealth is in understanding then how this is translated into action. In Daria, the title of the project is Dialogue and Action, and it is really all about finding the partnerships, working with others, and turning this into something that has meaning for learners in the end. So I would like to thank Roman, Oksana, and Grazia in particular for sharing this practical experience. And these are, in the end, the important things that will make us advance. The next steps, first of all, Anna is publishing in the chat a survey, which is a feedback survey for you. First of all, this is about feedback. So was this webinar useful as an introduction on what DigComp is? But there are also two practical things in the survey. The first one, for all of you, there is a question on whether you would like to contribute, whether you would like to be an advisor to Daria on the translation of documentation. I think that Alessandro and particular Stefano have illustrated that there is a wealth of materials that already exist. And this is materials of different kinds. Some is more for policymakers, some illustrates practical application. It's hundreds of pages. So it's very important for us to get some English speakers on board among you who also speak your national languages and Russian to help us select in which order we will translate what materials. So you have in this feedback survey the opportunity to indicate whether you would like to be part of this advisory group. This is on a voluntary basis. And then to indicate in which languages you would be able to do that. The starting point is always English language of the starting material. So you do need to understand English. You don't need to be a brilliant English speaker, but you need to understand the material then to help us, to advise us whether this is useful for teachers, for policymakers, etc. So that's very important so that we can progress. The second one is for those who joined us via YouTube and Facebook. We would like to understand from you whether you would like to join us in Zoom for the next sessions. Would you like to be part of this? And if this is the case, please leave us your contact details. Alternatively to doing that in the survey, so Anna has published the link in the chat, so all those in Zoom can use it immediately. It will be open for several hours, but please fill it in so that we know where to improve. You can also comment. So that's the first thing, so that we can progress as a group of colleagues in Daria, a group of colleagues from 5 different Central Asian countries and a community of practitioners from the EU. Then the second thing I wanted to say, and that question was asked, so yes, we will share the recording in English and in Russian on the Daria website, also all the materials. It will take a few days before they appear there, but all the materials used today will be there. And then if you share with us questions, there were 1 or 2 questions we didn't have time to answer for, we will do a quick interview with the person you asked and also post that on the Daria website so that you have the answers. So that's what I wanted to say from the Daria side. We are a big community. We will go as far as our joint readiness to speak with each other and then put something into action will bring us. I want to thank all the participants today in Zoom. Again, my colleague Alessandro, Stefano Clusa, Grazia Germandi, Roman Shian, and Oksana Pasechnik for their active contribution and sharing experience. My colleague Anna Kolobova, who is here with us, the interpreters, and also the colleagues in Bishkek helping us setting all of this Zoom interaction up. I hope to see you on 29th of March when we will deal with Digital Edu. Someone put this in the chat. Yes, there is another digital framework specifically for educators. And this is what we will look at in our next familiarization session. So I hope to see you there. I hope you enjoyed this information sharing. And please share with colleagues because soon we will start forming our working groups, the working teams, actually starting putting things into action among us and with each Central Asian country. Thank you very much. Enjoy the evening. Have a safe journey home. All the best to you and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.
Scott.